Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Rise Ryu, and today I'm going to be covering a small TvT game. This will be on the balance mod, and the topic for today's video will be new TvT and how the interaction with the cyclone changes the matchup. For reference, this TvT was a mech against mech game, and I'll be covering how mech and TvT works, as well as how the new cyclone interacts with everything, like I said before. So, small little chat from this game, and honestly, if you watched my stream earlier today, you will be able to watch my perspective from this game. But with the new TvT, there are two ways to open now. You can either open Bio, or you can open Cyclone. Honestly, you probably want to open Cyclone. And by Bio, I mean like the other things you would usually do in TvT. Marine, tanks, Banshees, Ravens. Things like Cyclone drop zone, the two medevacs, that's probably going to be missing. Now, we're going to be focusing on the opener I do. And right now, I think for TvT on the test map, the best way to open is to grab 15 gas, 16 racks, and 17 gas. Sorry, I put 16 gas. I meant 16 racks. So 15 gas, 16 racks, and 17 gas. Otherwise known as double gas. Now, similar to my TvT video, we're also going to be doing a gas pull here. However, with this build, you honestly don't really need to take workers off your gas. Or sorry, you don't need a SCV scale. My mistake. So one of the key things about the new Cyclone is that it's now able to lock onto both ground units and air units together, rather than just air units. Additionally, its damage is much higher. So the first thing you want to do is, right after your barracks is finished, you want to start a tech lab, a second depot. You can go Reaper actually before the tech lab if that's your style. And then after your factory, you want to go straight for the CC. If you feel like your opponent isn't going anything aggressive, you can just grab one Reaper before the tech lab. This game I was a little bit greedy and I was getting a little bit experimental, so I decided to go for a tech lab right away. So the key thing for this build is to get out the Cyclone, which is now a tech lab unit. It costs Force Supply 150-100 and Mag Field Accelerator. So we're going to go ahead and grab the Cyclone. And next, with our next 100 gas and after the CC, we're going to grab Mag Field Accelerator. What Mag Field Accelerator does is it effectively doubles the damage of the Cyclone against armored units with lock-on. For those who don't know, the Cyclone currently does, within this patch, it'll do 400 damage over 14 seconds. This means that each shot from the Cyclone's lock-on does pretty much 20 damage. With Mag Field Accelerator, it doubles this damage, going from 400 over 14 seconds to 800 over 14 seconds versus armored. This means that each shot will instead do 40 damage against armored units. This means the Cyclone will 3-shot each other because they have 120 HP. So here you can kind of watch an example of how the Cyclone functions. You can see it automatically locks on right away, and you can see it still has a pretty decent shot attack. Now, even though I lose the SCV here, because of the power of the new Cyclone, I'm able to keep up and kite and actually take out this whole force, despite it being very mobile. Now at around 325, you're going to notice you start floating gas. At this point, you can build a second factory and you can build another Rax Tech Lab. I like to call this build the 1-2-0 or the 1-1-0, as you don't really need a starport for a long time. Now from here, you want to just keep on pumping out Cyclones. If we look, we're getting a CC faster than our opponent, but our opponent is going for Banshees. So it's important to remember that at about 405, by the way, 352 or 350-ish, your Mag Field Accelerator should finish. So at around 4 minutes, we want to grab that eBay, no matter what we scout or no matter if it's Banshees or not, right? Because that is typically the latest you would ever want an eBay, just for missile turrets. As you can see here, we throw it down, we throw our factory onto the tech lab, and we now have about 3 Cyclones. We want to start producing 2 Cyclones at a time, and we want to grab that third gas at the natural as soon as we can. Remember, the new Cyclone now costs 4 supply, so you're going to want to be building depots consistently. Here I choose to move out with the Cyclone because you can get a lot of damage done. But remember, behind this, they can still harass you with the Banshee. And as we predicted, here's the Banshee. Now, even though the new Cyclone is rather strong against it, you can still get a lot of damage done with it. You can see how this player here actually manages to kill, let's see how many workers, 2, 3, gets out, keeps the Banshee alive, and gets even more kills over here. Already this is pretty strong. On the other side, we've only killed a tank and lost 2 cyclones for it. So not the best trading here. So even though we did take the significantly worse trade, it's still possible to get damage done with these. You can see here, we're still continuing to lose workers. 8 kills on 1 Banshee, very powerful. But that's okay. With the new Cyclone, you don't have to directly push in to get damage. Next, you're going to see me lift off my barracks, and this is where things start to get a little bit dicey. With the barracks, we use it as vision. However, before that, we want to keep on making Cyclones, and we want to drop down our CC at a reasonable time. Anytime you can, try to drop the third before 6 minutes. I think in this game, my third's a little bit late, but that's only because I wasn't watching too well. So here, what one strategy you can do is, you can bring your barracks and fly it over. This not only gives you vision of what's on the low ground, but you can also target buildings on, like, on a ledge or, like, ramp, you know? So here I see he has 2 tanks, which, right away, you should identify. The new Cyclone only has 120 HP. The current siege tanks do 70 damage versus the Cyclone. This means that no matter what, the siege tank will always 2-shot Cyclones. So ideally, you don't want to combat this type of force, especially when they're this close together. So behind this, as soon as you identify that they're covered and you can no longer get free damage with the Cyclones, you want to drop down your 3rd factory, your starport, and your armory. And you want to start going for siege tanks. Now here, I notice that he has his buildings exposed, and here I try to use my Cyclones to actually pick off and kill a couple of his buildings. And you can see he brings forces over here, but without unsieging his tanks and risking them, he just kind of loses them. This is the power of the Cyclone, able to quickly maneuver and just kind of poke away at units that are out of position. This is what makes the unit so strong. That being said, I realize there's no more aggression to be had here, so I move the units back. I try to link it up with my other Cyclones, and I start to land my 3rd base. As you can see, I'm starting to drop down extra CCs. Already identifying that this is a mech versus mech game, the first thing you need to understand is, in mech versus mech, the goal is to start prioritizing economy and bases faster than the other player. For this reason, mech versus mech is actually considerably faster than biotank versus biotank. Here, though, is a good example of how to not use your Cyclones. Notice how we can pick away at these depots, but as soon as we get too close and we try to overextend with these tanks, they actually pick off quite a lot of our Cyclones, and we go from a huge Cyclone army to almost nothing. We actually lose quite a lot, but our opponent is trading so badly and so poorly that we're still ahead. Now behind this, you want to expand to as many locations as you can, assuming you know it's mech against mech. The defending mech player will have to play defensive, meanwhile you can take as many bases as you want. It's important that you prioritize getting gases. It's okay to pull extra workers to actually desaturize your base, such as here, to occupy more gas. We'll also want to be building a lot of workers, typically around 85 to 90 works. We'll also want to be on 5 factories by now. In mech versus mech, Hellbats aren't as important, so you can actually go 4 tech labs, 1 reactor for the starting time. You also want to be on double armory. My mistake. Now, here's another good example of another situation that you should know. In mech versus mech, you'll see a lot of Hellion run-bys, and this is actually an interesting interaction. Hellions counter Hellions, but even more than that, Hellions counter Hellions with positioning. Over here, my opponent actually misplaces his Hellions, and he lines them up for my 4 Hellions to kill his 6 Hellions. This is a very big deal. Now, behind this, in mech versus mech, our goal should now be to occupy as many bases as we can, expand as outward as we can, as well as control the middle and the watchtowers. We want to have vision of when our opponent is pushing and where our opponent's bases are. Notice how we're on 86 workers to our opponent's 66. This will help us because we want to be building a large army, and if you look at the supply, you can tell that by just having that much more workers, we can build a much bigger army, as we're massively ahead in supply. Now, with mech, you want to have siege pushes. You want to slowly push away and siege. However, you don't want to do it with bio, as when you're rallying multiple units. You actually want to rally your units into one group, so after one push is done, you can siege another area. You'll see in this video here, or this battle here, how I kind of take it. First, you want to morph all your Hellions into Hellbats, and then you want to slowly engage. My opponent was ready for this, so my siege push didn't go as expected or as planned. But because we had more Vikings, we actually won the greater battle, the air battle. In mech versus mech, air control is huge. Even with mech in general, just having the air lead is massive. So here, having the air control, we're actually able to take out his Vikings, and now he has to burn scans to make sure we don't siege your tanks forward. Behind this, I'm rallying units over here, and I'm building extra CCs. You can tell I'm taking all the gases at each of my bases. Additionally, I also make a depot wall here so we can no longer run by. Sorry about the pings, by the way. I'll try to limit that a little bit. We want to also throw down our extra starports because we want to start getting out Liberators and more medevacs. You can see here that now he's cleared up my force by sacrificing a little too much. If we look at the value, it's still really close. However, the value isn't what's important, but rather map control. Even though we've lost nearly the same amount, he's only starting his 4th CC now, whereas I've been on 5 bases, I'm taking 2 more CCs, and I'm getting up to 5 factories and 3 starports. Additionally, we're both even on upgrades. So once I realize here he's defended, I start to take my next army over here and siege it over here. My opponent doesn't have anywhere to expand to because he's forced to make units. Behind this, I leave Liberators here as a countermeasure because I know his Viking count is low. Once I realize he's not in position here, I slowly siege right outside of his depots. And you can see, he's forced to engage into me. It's important here that if you watch my siege tank control, you can see I first shift clicked the Hellions. Watch where I next move my shift click to. I then proceed to target the tanks. The siege tanks will always do more damage, because once it's just the Hellbats, they won't be doing too much. Now behind this, I have a new mech army. You want to grab this army and siege the next spot. Since we have 2 Liberators in the air lead, we can actually just siege our Liberators right over his tank army. Behind this, we can slowly push forward. And you can see he doesn't have enough Vikings to push this back. Mech is a very odd composition, as siege tanks counter siege tanks and Hellions counter Hellions. Behind this, however, remember, we're always expanding, we're always getting more bases, we're always finding excuses to spend our minerals, and we're always rallying new armies. You can see here I even siege a Liberator over his other siege tanks. Once I realize this place is insecure, I move this forward army up. And you can see here, this is how you would want to play TvT in the new patch, how cyclones interact, and how to play a mech for TvT. This video may have been a little bit complex and a little bit odd, but I hope this covered everything. Let's take a quick look one last time at what we got going. Behind this I have Lib Range on the way. I have my upgrades now for air weapons and +3 vehicles. I'm on 5 factories constantly producing tanks if I can. Well, I'm maxed here. I'm trying to constantly produce Vikings and Liberators, and I'm constantly sieging outside of his base, preventing him from taking expos here, here, and here. My goal overall is to control the map and mine it out quicker than my opponent. Later on, you can move into building orbitals, lots and lots of orbitals, as well as missile turrets outside of his base with your siege pushes. And that will conclude today's video. Thank you for watching.